I didn't feel very sporty. I didn't see myself in sport. But also I was getting all these messages from both the Western culture and my own culture that sport isn't for women, or being physical isn't for women, and competing isn't for women. And so I feel like I had this double whammy of, well, that's not for me.
That's Rana Hussain, the powerhouse behind Good Human, leading diversity at Cricket Australia and helping shape the game from the boardroom at Basketball Australia. Rana's one of the leading voices pushing Australian sport to be more inclusive, and we are here for it. This series of Sportish is powered by Play Well, a movement from the Australian Sports Commission that's about making sure everyone has a place in sport. Rana Hussain, welcome to Sportish.
Oh, what a thrill to be here. Thanks for having me.
Rana, we wanted to start in a place where you tell us what it was like growing up in your sport-obsessed family.
It's so funny because I listened to you talk about Boxing Day. For us as Muslims, we don't celebrate Christmas. So it was always a weird time of the year. You know, we love the sales. We love the food. I love a minced tub. But it was always kind of a nothing day for us. We might go to the park and have a barbecue or something because it's a public holiday. But Boxing Day always felt like the day because it was the Boxing Day test. Finally, we were waiting for that game to start. And in my house, Dad was kind of the controller of the remote. By osmosis, I got to love cricket, and Boxing Day test was kind of quintessential to that. We often would go, though, as a community. So whenever India or Pakistan came to Australia, as a Muslim community and an Indian community, we would go to the game together. So, 40, 50 people together sitting in a bay watching the cricket. So while watching the Boxing Day test in our living room is a big part of my childhood memory, actually being at the MCG watching it is a core memory for me. And it's very connected to my community, my sense of belonging to the Muslim community here and the migrant community, and what it felt like to turn up. We would sit next to Bay 13, which now that I think about it, feels really dicey. Bay 13 is notoriously kind of riotous and raucous. But as a child, it just felt like a big party, and we would go and not go for Australia, and that feels sacrilegious to say, especially after working at Cricket Australia. But it was just part of how we were raised on cricket, that actually loving cricket was part of honouring my Indian identity as well.
It sounds like sport was something your family clearly valued when you were growing up. When did that start to change for you?
It took a while. I had sport all around me all the time. And so it just was the backdrop of my childhood, really. But it kind of clicked for me and ticked over when I was kind of in that preteen, early adolescent phase where, I was just interested because my friends were interested. A friend of mine actually took me to a Western Bulldogs Melbourne game on a Friday night. That was my first game of AFL footy at the MCG. And I just kind of fell in love with the game. Up until that point, I thought, okay, I guess this is just something we all have to know about. But watching it unfold in front of me and the excitement and, adults screaming their heads off, and it was electric to me. And then the other kind of turning point, I reckon, was the Sydney Olympics, which is kind of, it's sort of mind-blowing than talking to you, Livy. Because I was that kid. I was a 14-year-old just glued to the television screen. And for me, it wasn't just the sport. It was also Kathy Freeman and what she did for a conversation about what it means to be Australian. What does it mean to have multiple identities as an Australian? That was one of the first times as a young person and a young woman of colour, I saw another woman of colour celebrated for her dual identities and the different facets of who she was. And so in a really core way for me, that was like a formative moment of, oh, it's okay to do that and to be that. And sport gave me that. And so I think something clicked inside me that this can be a really happy place. And so I just kind of started to lean in.
Did you always feel like it was something that was accessible to you as a Muslim, but as a female as well?
God, no. No. My parents were really interested in us being physically active, but the message was really clear that this is a childhood thing. And once you get a little bit older, again, at adolescence, this needs to taper off or needs to look different. It needs to be, for us, a very cultural understanding of being physical is kind of walking or lawn bowls or something that's very kind of demure, and that's not a religious thing. Actually, I've come to learn about my own faith. That's a very cultural thing, that once you kind of cross over into adolescence as a woman, you kind of retreat from your physicality. And so
Interesting.
for me it was, I didn't feel very sporty. I didn't see myself in sport. But also I was getting all these messages from both the Western culture and my own culture, Eastern culture, that sport isn't for women, or being physical isn't for women, and competing isn't for women. And so I feel like I had this like double whammy of, well, that's not for me, because I didn't see it on telly. I didn't see it in the way girls do now. And then at home, it wasn't really encouraged either.
So if you couldn't play sport, but you still loved it, what was the next best thing for you?
Well, it was to just lean hard into being a fangirl.
Yes.
Boy, did I. I mean, there's two elements to that. I just went, well, if I don't really have any great ability to excel at this. And also, to your earlier question, like playing netball and hockey also just felt uncomfortable because we wear modest clothing, and at that time, playing netball, you couldn't wear pants under your skirt. I think my parents would have happily let us play for longer if those kinds of accommodations were made, but we had to wear the little netball skirt, and then that felt really uncomfortable. I didn't feel free and comfortable to run around the court then, because I felt it wasn't me. And so because of all of that, I kind of went, okay, I'm not going to be sporty. I'm not going to play sport, but I can love it as hard as I can. And so I just became that person that happily talked to everybody about sport all the time.
What do you think really drew you to it? Because obviously you've talked about that physicality and maybe that sense of community that you got. But can you kind of tell us more about how you became a fan, or that kind of felt like in your body, and what you enjoyed the most about sport?
I think it was all of those things. I genuinely remember being at, and I'm not just, again, I sound like such a fangirl, or maybe I am. I genuinely remember being glued, like sitting this close to the TV screen, watching you swim, watching Kieran Perkins before you, just kind of like fixated on what that looked like. Like it genuinely just felt exciting to me, and like I was watching something that I A, could never do, or B, just had never seen. So it felt, I mean it in the best possible way, that it felt so alien to me, and so therefore really exciting.
Yeah.
But also, when I think about footy, in particular AFL, when I could say I belong to this team and I'm a fan of this team, it gave me a place to belong and a way to signal to people who I was, what I was about, something to talk about. It gave me a way to melt the ice with people. And
Yes.
growing up, particularly post 9/11, I was a teenager. I was 14 when the 2000 Olympics happened, and, almost 15 when 9/11 happened. It was very formative for me, and I really clearly remember the difference in walking around being a young Muslim woman pre 9/11 and post 9/11, and the discomfort I felt and people felt with me. And so when I could say things like, well, I go for the Ds and I think this about the cricket and what about that Boxing Day test, people just relaxed. And I really learnt quickly, oh, sport gives me that sense that I can park all of that baggage and I can just be another human being in the world, which is complex and kind of heartbreaking now that I think about a young Rana who's doing all those calculations in her head. Um, and so it's sad that I needed that, but sport gave me that ease socially.
And it's interesting because sport has almost this dual role here in Australia where it can be this incredible opportunity for creating places of belonging, but it can also be a place that is perpetrating racism and fostering that sort of really unfortunate culture that, you know, we have to say we do have an element of in Australia. And it's obviously an issue that can be sit across a number of organisations and sporting organisations in particular. How do you think codes can do better at creating an environment that is really supportive of all Australians?
I feel such a responsibility. And I think, you know, as women who advocate for a better sporting industry as well, we know this sense of both loving sport and feeling like it's given you so much and gives you a place where you feel like you belong and it gives you community. But you also have to hold the fact that it doesn't always do that and it actually shuts a lot of people out. And so I think that that's where sporting codes and the industry needs to start recognizing first that the power that sport has to bring people together. And I think we do that bit really well. We know that. We often shy away from the ways in which sport can be really exclusionary. And a lot of the kind of tradition and culture and unspoken rules that come with sport can really leave people out. And not that it's intentional, but that it's just been built in a way by one group of people and it hasn't really considered different perspectives. So when I advise sports in particular, I ask them first to think about, okay, to get the information, gather the perspectives. You know, just listen to community who are either knocking on your door saying, I would like to be part of this, or who aren't even turning up because they assume it's not for them. And I was definitely one of those people. I just didn't bother with community sport in particular because I just didn't think it was a space that I was allowed, I would fit in, that would be fun for me. You starting places, really getting that information and sense of experience across the board. What does it actually feel like for you to turn up? What are the barriers? What makes it easy? What makes it really hard? I think that listening piece is the first step. And then once you hear what the experience is, it's very hard then to not act and go, okay, well, we can probably shift some of that around and make it easier. And you can help us figure out how to do that.
It's such a good point because you really want to break down those structures because I think we just get into that mindset, well, this is just how it's done. And it's having that listening piece that will allow things to shift and to mould. But you started to talk about your work at Cricket Australia. So you took your love of sport and decided to go into working in the organisations. You land your dream job, Cricket Australia. What did that mean for you?
Oh, that was a huge moment for me. And it turns out for so many other people, which I didn't realize was going to happen. I just thought, oh my gosh, like I think the memory I have the most clear about that time was being able to tell my family and I just remembered the way my dad kind of sat back and smiled. Like he didn't jump up and down, but he just like sat back and just went, oh, that's cool. Like it just was that feeling of like I did something that really made him go, oh wow. And I reflect back on that now. And actually even the other day he said to me, you know, I came to this country hoping, you know, to create a good life for all of you. and to contribute a little bit back to society. And he's done incredible work across 50 years in the health industry. And he said, but you've taken it the next step, and to know that that's what I started and we hoped for, and you've been able to surpass us in that, makes me really proud. And I think that's always kind of front of mind for me. But then Cricket Australia announced that I'd joined and put up a post, as organisations do, and my name started trending because people in India were so thrilled that an Indian Australian woman is now going to be advising Cricket Australia on inclusion and diversity, and that was wild to me. So it was super meaningful to me, deeply personal, but then it kind of was a bit daunting because I realised, okay, a lot of people really have been waiting for this. You become the kind of proxy for people, and what you do becomes really important, and you're their voice.
Rana, when you stepped into those Cricket Australian offices as a Muslim Australian woman, how did Cricket Australia go in making you feel included and making sure you felt like you had a place in that organisation?
Look, as is always the case, the people were amazing. And frankly, they were so excited. Like, I don't think I've ever joined a job where people were coming up and shaking my hand and saying, "Oh my God, you're here," which is really weird. There's a weird side to that. But it was so well intentioned and from a deep desire to evolve as an organisation, as a sport. The problem with, and this is not a Cricket Australia thing, this is a industry thing and a society thing, the systems aren't ready. The systems, the job that I do is crashing into those systems and holding up a mirror and asking hard questions and saying, how can we do this better? And that was really hard. That was a hard space to kind of hold. And these are big, wieldy systems that need a lot of collective effort. And so while I felt really loved and welcomed, what was really challenging was being a voice when you need collective effort.
Did you feel like that experience kind of prompted that idea that, in your sports journey, you realise it's not just about fitting in, but really truly belonging?
Big time. This is something I really had to grapple and I still kind of do a lot of introspection around, because I think initially part of why I leaned so heavily into sport was that deep desire to fit in. And Brené Brown talks about the difference between fitting in and belonging. And fitting in means you literally try and fit yourself into what already exists. Whereas when you belong, you kind of can spread out and exhale and be yourself. And so my first job in sport was at the Richmond Footy Club, and I was initially hired to engage with Indian fans in a kind of a fan engagement and marketing role, which sort of makes me giggle now because I had no idea how to do that job. I just knew what it meant to be a fan, and so I went from there. Initially, I looked at everything that we were doing and I looked across other clubs, and I sort of went, all we're doing and all my experience of loving sport has ever shown me is that we ask people to be like us, to look like us, to sound like us, to fit in. And that's the only thing we offer them. You got to use the lingo, you got to use the stat chat, you've got to sound, love sport in one way.
Yes.
And so I just started to ask the question, well, what if instead of that, we kind of threw our doors open metaphorically and went, you can be who you want to be here and be a Richmond supporter. And you can be your full self as a Richmond supporter, and we will be the space to hold that. And what would that look like from a fan point of view and a business point of view and an organisational point of view? And funnily enough, the high performance team were having the same conversation. They were saying, how do we make sure that our athletes can be who they want to be and we embrace their full selves, because we know when we do that, we're going to get their best performance. And so now that's the conversation I have with sport, is how do you create the environment where people feel like they belong, like they're bringing their unique skill set to the table and they're not masking any of that.
That's what Georgie and I talk about so often, right, is the way that we enjoy sport looks so different. Like, we don't care about stats. We're not interested in those sorts of things.
Well, I mean, Libby does if it's swimming.
Only swimming. Otherwise, no.
Doesn't care.
Absolutely not. But it's so much about that human story, the human elements, the connection. How do we get, the best performance out of ourselves? And I just love the way that you're describing that experience between fitting in and belonging.
All of us know what that feels like when you feel like you belong somewhere. There's no kind of barrier between you and the environment that you're in. You just get to I actually think about it in terms of water. Like, when you're in the water, you can just kind of ease yourself around.
Flow, yes.
Flow, exactly. And so what does that look like in a sporting environment, in a workplace environment, in a school? How do you create that sense of flow where you aren't armored up, you aren't masked, you aren't trying to fit in, but you're confident in, well, this is who I am, what I bring to the table, and I know it's valued, and I know I'm valued here.
What did it feel like for you then to be out on the boundary at the MCG on Boxing Day, holding a microphone and engaging with the fans?
Oh, it is like, I can't even finish the sentence. It's one of my favorite bits of my life ever. It's such a full circle moment, actually, to have been the fan at the cricket and watching the people, running around with the headsets on and wondering what their life is like, to now doing that. And to do it being me is really special. Kids and families will run down to the boundary and want to take a photo with me or just say hello. Last year, there were women on level 2 in hijabs just waving furiously at me, trying to get my attention. And thank God I noticed them. I looked up because I was like, oh, there's some ruckus going on. Is
that Bay 13?
Yeah.
People... and I'm no one. I'm not even on the field. I'm not doing anything that's special, but that visibility, and I carry very clearly that it's not me they're responding to, but just what it represents to have someone like me out there.
Yeah, but it must be incredible to feel like you're part of leading that charge of breaking down those barriers of entry for a lot of people. And there is such a big opportunity for so many sporting clubs to make sure that participants aren't, as we talked about, just fitting in, but really truly belonging. Have you seen any particular organisations that are doing it best, in your opinion?
I think the clubs that I want to shout out are the smaller clubs, the small organisations who do the little things and that make a huge difference. So it's the cricket club that makes sure there's halal meat. It's such a basic, or just asks dietaries and looks at their community and go, what's going to make it easier for you to stick around after the game and hang out and chat. And that's the stuff society needs. We need people to engage, but not just turn up and play, but also stick around and build connections. And that's the opportunity sport has. And so when clubs, think about this really small things. Do you need a prayer space? What are the dietaries? What's our community? What are their needs? How do we make sure the environment's safe for them? I think everyone does the kind of the flashy stuff reasonably well. It's the genuine, well-intended, regular acts of inclusion that I think sometimes go unnoticed, but those are the things that actually make a huge difference.
Rana, you've spent years finding your place in sport and in physical activity. What does your relationship with sport look like today?
I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I've become a huge gym junkie.
Yes, get it. Love that.
Are you counting your macros, Rana?
I am.
Are you all about protein? Because that's where we're at right now.
Yes. Protein is life. I have a trainer. I feel so smug every time I get to say that.
So cool.
I have spent my entire life, I mean, for all the things that we've talked about, on top of that, significant body image issues for me, a real lack of confidence. I spent my life not moving my body and actually feeling quite disconnected from it. I didn't ever feel like I could confidently walk upstairs. Like I would look at stairs and feel daunted and scared. Actual panic at the idea of having to be physically active because I just spent so long thinking that I couldn't do it, that it was going to be too hard, that it felt uncomfortable, that I looked bad and that I looked sweaty and gross. And so now that is like a 180 for me where I'm never out of activewear, which is it's embarrassing, but
Same girl.
it is.
Same.
It's the life stage.
I can't go back to normal pants now. They're too loose. I'm like, I can't move in this. I'm at the gym all the time. I'm falling in love actually with being physical and moving my body. I go to a dance class every Monday night. I feel weird when I don't walk in the morning. Just a fog just lifted for me and I just decided to give it a go.
You're in your gym girl era and we love that for you.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I find I have discovered most powerfully in my experience, and I think a lot of people's can connect to it, is that sport creates like a trust in your body, or physical activity creates a trust, and you can respond to what your body needs more effectively when you are moving it intentionally, when you're starting to listen to it and not just ignore it. Do you still have those thoughts creep in, or are you much more easily able to kind of push those down and just move through it?
Oh no, all the time. And like I said to my trainer the other day, like, oh, sorry, I'm really sweaty. And my trainer was like, yeah, like that's good. What's wrong with sweat? Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, what is wrong with sweat? That's what I'm here for, actually. And it just made me so aware. I'm starting to hear that talk. Like I couldn't even hear that was the way I was talking in my brain. And now I can actually hear that those are the thoughts in my head. I hear things like, you look gross, you look dumb, you look sweaty, and I'm in real time just changing that for myself and challenging it. I will often cry at the gym because something in my body has triggered some other kind of trauma or thought process and a emotional kind of release. And my poor trainers just had to get used to that. I don't know if either of you cry at the gym or
all the time.
Exercise. Yeah,
it's like your emotions are finding a way out of your body, which is what sport and physical activity is so brilliant at.
Yeah, I used to watch Olympians cry at the end of a race or do something extreme, and I'd be like, I wonder why they're crying.
That's weird.
Like, are they in pain? Like, what? And now I'm like, oh, okay, yeah.
I get it.
I totally get it. Of course you're crying.
Rana, we see a huge participation dropout in sport around the age of 13 and 14, and particularly with girls. You have a daughter who's about to hit those teenage years. What do you want your daughter to know, and what do you take from your own experience and pass on to your daughter now?
We had a really interesting experience with her. So she's had sport around her all her life because of me. But she pushes the other way. She doesn't feel like a naturally sporty kid. Plays a lot of sport actually, but largely because we've constructed it that way and we're not going to let it go because we really believe in her being physically active. But the shift we had to make was this. We took her to really structured, great sporting clubs. I took her to a netball club that was this really schmick, amazing club that's really successful. We're like, this is going to be great. And she absolutely hated it. Then we found a more local club netball program that was, in a low socioeconomic area. She had a couple of friends that already went there. It's very multicultural, and it's very loose, I'll say. But she has the most fun. She just loves it and is happy to go. So what I want for her now is just that she connects moving her body to it being a positive experience. And I just don't care about anything else, that she is happy to run around in whatever form. So she loves roller skating. She actually loves getting on a surfboard. I think she likes moving her body, but it just doesn't have to look like a team sport necessarily, or funnel into the structures that we think of. And then the other thing I hope for her is that if she wanted to play in a more structured way, that she can go to a netball club that says, yeah, you can wear leggings under your netball skirt. You can wear your hijab in the pool, your water hijab in the swimming pool. You can wear full sleeves, because if that's how you feel comfortable, then great, we can wrap around that. So I want her to have the confidence to ask for what she needs, but also for the system to be happy to oblige her as well.
Rana, it has just been such a pleasure speaking with you today. The Australian Sports Commission Play Well strategy is all about driving that inclusive participation in sport and that belonging that sport and movement can bring. And you've just articulated that so, so beautifully. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thanks for having me. I could talk to you two for hours, honestly.
Yeah, I know, same. I don't want to wrap it up. This series of Sportish is powered by the Australian Sports Commission's Play Well strategy. Play Well is about creating fun and inclusive sporting experiences for all Australians, because everyone has a place in sport. You can find out more about the Play Well strategy at ausport.gov.au/playwell. This series is produced by Deadset Studios and hosted by us, Georgie and Libby Trickett.
Sportish and the Australian Sports Commission acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast was made.
We recognise the outstanding contribution that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples make to sport and celebrate the power of sport to tell stories and promote reconciliation.